Well, we crossed the Rhine River then. You know, the war is winding down, but you don't think it'll ever be over. You just don't. Excuse me, it's day after day. And and there wasn't any solid line of defense with the Germans anymore from the North Sea and Holland to Switzerland. A lot of that was broken up and it was just solid places, you know. And we crossed the Rhine River, and I remember coming down the bank of that pontoon bridge, and it was way across there. I think it was either 1,100 feet or 1,700 feet was the length of that bridge. And you come down on that pontoon bridge, and it goes down in the river a little bit, and it's wide and it's deep and it's running. And then you're afraid, man, Jerry's going to shell it while you're on the bridge. But we finally got across there, and then they gave us a mission to go on. There was a big canal there called the Dortmund-Ems Canal. It was in that part of Germany where Essen is and Dortmund. It's all built up, a lot of manufacturing. One town after another. Excuse me. And Jerry had blown all the main bridges. Not only the primary, but the secondary, most of the third class bridges. But our job was to go in this area. They thought there was some bridges there that wouldn't hold a tank or a vehicle, but maybe a farmer's bridge where you get some infantry across. Once you get the infantry across, then you can get a little landing place there, and the engineers could put up a new bridge. But there was 3 bridges that they had given us. The first 2 we went to were blown. And then we went to the other area, and I could see down along the canal, that bridge was still intact. But then we started firing. Everybody starts firing in case there's some Germans around that bridge, and when they see us coming, they'll blow it. Well, you kind of think that firing down there will keep them down, you know, and they won't blow it. But then we got almost onto it. Then that thing blew up. And then we called in and told them what had happened, you know, and we didn't have anything else. And so then they told us to come on in, and wherever headquarters was that time was in another little town. And it got to be dark, and once you get into Germany, you know, when you're in France, Belgium, and Holland, you know, they're allies. You treat the country nice and the people nice. But when you cross that border into Germany, it's different then, man. What is German, and what is American is American. What is German is American. You take whatever you just want. And when you first got into Germany, the looks they gave you, you know, they let you know you're not wanted here. You know, and they don't smile or nothing. And you just go into their homes and or whatever you see, you know, you just take. And like I say, the GIs, he's after everything. There was pots and pans hanging on tanks and vehicles, and you saw the infantry carrying this and that they'd take out of German homes. When you dig a hole in the ground, you'd go in the German house, man, get yourself a nice blanket to put in there on the dirt and stuff. It was different then, man. And they couldn't believe it, man. You had come 5,000 miles and finally you're in their homeland. And some of them were kind of nice to you. Of course, the German, or the American too, you know, he's always after the ladies. So then they put out the non-fraternization law. Did you ever hear the guys talk about that? And that came out. And so, of course, a lot of the GIs, they wouldn't pay any attention to that. And I don't know what the fine was if you got caught. It was either $35 or $65 that they would take out of your pay, you know, if you got talking to a German civilian. So that's the way it was when you got into Germany. But then anyway, they called us back, and that night we're in this German house. They're in part of the house, and we just go in. And but before that, before we had gotten the Rhine River, we got to the Rhine River and we were called back, and we went into a German house, big house. The house and the barn is under the same roof, and we just take over the bedrooms and the big kitchen. And the Germans, they could have one of the kitchens in the other part of the house, you know, but we would take over, so we'd have a place to sleep, and we would cook in the kitchens. That's what we were doing this night after we had got up there to the canal. And then the order came down. They were hollering, "Stand to alert." When they hollered, "Stand to alert," the GI cusses like he never cussed before. This is one of the things out in Hollywood. The guy said, "Did you cuss?" I said, "Yeah, we cussed. It was the first language most of the time." When they holler, "Stand to alert," it means get all your equipment together, man. We're moving out. And man, we thought we were going to have a nice night. And then the orders come down. They said that now we're going to be pulling out of here and we're going on a mission tonight. We're going behind the enemy lines. And nobody's going to be out there but jury, and it's going to be dark. And with some kind of, they don't tell you what the mission is. But they said time was the essence. And they said if we run into any action till daybreak tomorrow or whenever this mission is done, if you can't get out of it, knock it off, pull out and go. Just let it behind you. Don't spend any time trying to find jury or knocking him out. Just try to get around him and go on with the mission. We did find out later on what the mission was. So then we mounted up. And we had, I guess earlier that afternoon, we went through some of them barns. You're always scrounging around, not only looking for something to eat or something to drink, but maybe some juries that are hiding out. And you run into a lot of alcohol, home brew and stuff. And some of it came in jugs, man, this high. The basket whipped around them. And then you'd get in there and pour it out into something small and then pour it into little things and stack it in every little place in your tank, you know. And that's what we done. We had every empty spot in the tank, man. All the vehicles too, man. Bottles of schnapps. So we pull out and it's dark. And no action yet. And I'm sitting in the gunner seat. We had lost a guy the day before, so I didn't have a loader. But the tank commander, who was sitting down front, came up and sat in the gunner seat alongside of me. So we're going along. It must be about 11 o'clock at night, I guess. And here come a German freight train coming down on the right side of the road, coming out of Germany. He didn't know how far the Americans were up there. We didn't know that they were coming either. But that train was coming down there, and everybody just swung their guns around there and shot that thing up. You know, and somebody must have put a big shell in the boiler and it blew up. And you could hear jury screaming and hollering. But we didn't go near there. And, you know, there's big fires down there. And then the orders came to move on. So we went on and we stopped at 5:30 in the morning. And we got out of the tanks. Everybody just piles out. And just threw all caution to the wind. It's just unbelievable. There wasn't any action during the night, and we just didn't think there was going to be any. So we stopped to take a 15-minute break. Give the vehicle a break and the men to take a break. So I pile out of the vehicle, and gunners hang out with gunners, and drivers with gunners, or drivers and so forth, you know. That's how you buddy up and get along. So coming up alongside of my tank was this guy from New Britain, Connecticut, Vince. And we were smoking there, and generally, and it just started to get daylight, barely daylight. You know, you're very careful if you smoke at night. You know, you're smoking like this, covering the cigarette, you know. But I don't think that it wasn't really dark yet, but we weren't paying any attention to it. And so then you have little stoves in a vehicle about that high, and gasoline, you pump them up and put your canteen cup on there with the water in it and make your coffee. So that's what we done. We said, well, let's go back here and see Jim Cherry. So we're walking down the road. All our vehicles are lined up, and everybody's out on the road. It's a very narrow blacktop road, and we get near Jim Cherry. They had a big Sherman tank with 105 on it, artillery piece. They got the Shermans when we got the light tanks, before they had a light tank. So I see Jim up on the turret, and he's grabbing the 50 and he swings that around, you know, and he starts firing. and here comes a German truck up the side of the road. Maybe he was in our column all night after dark. Nobody paid him mind. I don't know. And maybe he stayed in the column. I don't know. But when he saw that, the truck swerved over and turned over on its side. Well, then all the GIs they're over there rooting through the truck to see what they can find. The driver is dead, but they pull the assistant driver out. So then the trash is all over the road there. I mean, just crazy. And so then the order come to mount up. We had to go on. So I'm standing up in the turret of the tank. My loader, who was a tank commander, he said, well, you got some sleep during the night. Now I'll take a nap. Down in front in the light tanks, there's 2 seats, the driver and assistant driver. They're like little stuffed chairs. Not very big, but they're comfortable. And you could sleep in those. So he went down and got in there. And I said, I don't think we'll need, the way things are going, John won't need you. So then a Jeep pulls up alongside of our tank. And it was out of the scout section. In the scout section, your platoon is broken up into the armored car section with the tank and the artillery section and the scout section. They have Jeeps. So there's a guy, when Jeep stopped, there's a guy sitting there in the assistant driver's seat. His name is Shorty Mercer. Shorty was the kind of guy, he'd been in the Army 1,000 years. You know, he'd never learned how to soldier. But everybody loved him. He was a little rotund guy. His cigarette was always hanging down in his mouth, you know, and always smoking. And his hat was always down over his face, bumping on his nose. He was like that wherever you'd see him. And he would be always singing, he was from the South, and he was always singing Big Bouquet of Roses or Walking the Floor Over You, something like that, you know. Hillbilly guy. And he said, hey, you need a gunner, a loader up there, don't you? I said, nah, I'm all right, Shorty. He said, oh, let me up there. I said, what do you want up here for? And he said, I said, it's cold up here like it is in the Jeep. He said, yeah, but I'll be out of the wind. I said, well, come on up there. So he gets up and he sits and gets in the loader seat, which is to my right. I'm sitting on the left. And we go through the thing about loading the gun. He didn't have to do anything really. When I would fire the big gun, I'd just pull the handle, the breech would pop open, the empty would come out, and all he'd have to do is throw the other one in. And I'd go like that, you know. So he got up and he got in there, and we talked a little bit. And then we're still sitting on the street, on the road, and here comes a platoon leader from the head of the column. And I see him coming. I didn't even know what he wanted, and I knew that he didn't want me. So he gets alongside of our tank, and you know, he looks up and he said, "Where's Sergeant Selby?" I said, "Down front." I said, "He wants to take a break." And he said, "Well, that's okay, Evans." He said, "Now we're just going down here. There's little bridges down here. We want to see if they're going to be heavy enough or strong enough to hold the tanks." He said, and now he said, and I said, he said, you know, everybody gets a chance to go first. He said, now it's your turn to go first. Well, nobody wants to go first. Nobody. And I said, yes, sir. He said, have your driver get out and go to the head of the column. So I hollered down to the driver, was Harold Asher, was from Kansas City, Michigan. I said, did you get the good news? Then he starts swearing. I said, do what he says, pull out and go to the head of the column. We pulled out and went to the head of the column, then we started out. We hadn't gone, Andy, 50 feet, I guess, and I saw a big red flash on the right side of the road. It just big ball of fire lit up. I dropped down in my seat, and you do like you always do. You lean forward to look into the sights. Your left hand goes for your switches. You grab the turret switch, it's like a pistol grip. If you turn it left and right, that's the way the turret will go. But the more you turn it left and right, the faster it'll turn. Plus, for your two guns in your turret, you have the triggers on top of that. In other words, you can grab that thing, you have two triggers that press down with the thumb. So just about I'd lean forward, that thing had hit that turret. lit up the inside of that turret. Man, that turret got cherry red. And right away, our guys started firing on the Germans. There's a lot of firing going on. The Germans are firing back. And then, within a couple of minutes, our guys done what we were told to do to break it off. So they broke off the fire and went on. So Asher, the driver, had bailed out, so I bailed out. And I knew I was hurt, but I didn't know that I couldn't see. But I knew, I was pretty sure that where that shell had hit, it had killed Shorty. I jumped out on the sponson and jumped as far as I could to get away from the tank. The tank's burning. And down in the ditch. And Asher is in the ditch. And now the ammo is starting to go off in the tank. And the Germans aren't even coming to us. I hear the Germans talking. And I'm laying there in the ditch, and I really thought I was going to die. And it just felt like this side of my face was gone. So I was reaching in my jacket pocket like this. What was I going in there for? I was going in there to take something out. No, that was a little bit later. But I thought I was going to die. And I really wanted to die. I thought if I looked that bad the way I thought I felt, I didn't want to go back home. And then I thought, we're behind the lines, and our guys are gone. Nobody will find our bodies. Nobody, my family will never know what happened to me. So then we're laying in the ditch, and the Germans still haven't come for us, but everything's quiet, except the fire is burning in the tank. And I knew we were going to be taken prisoner. So I go in with my hands in my jacket pockets here, pulling out some medals that I had taken off a jury the day before. I knew if they caught me with that stuff, it would be bad news. But before that, I had been wearing a German P38 pistol. And when we got the orders that night, I took that pistol off. By the way, my weapon was a Thompson sub. But I would carry this German P38 in my pocket when I'm behind the German lines when there wasn't any shooting going on, but I didn't want to be carrying with the Tommy gun. But you're in Germany, you want to have some kind of weapon, so I would wear that on my belt. But the night before that, when they said we're going behind the German lines, I took that off. And I laid it on ammo rack behind me. So I was glad that I didn't have that on there. The way my fingers were, I'd have never been able to get it off. So then the Germans are still talking, but nobody's coming for us. And so I said to Asher, how do I look? I wasn't hurting, not much. And he didn't say anything. I said, how do I look? And he said, you look awful, or something to that effect. The first time he wouldn't answer, then I asked him again. So then I said, well, go in my first aid kit and take you had a first aid kit on your belt. It had a little packet of sulfa powder in there. And besides a couple other things, I said, well, get that sulfa powder and sprinkle it on my face. So he'd done that, and then we laid there, and then I didn't want to die. I just had a desire, man, for some reason I wanted to live. But I just couldn't figure out, why aren't the juries coming for us? Our guys are going. So then I said to Asher, we ought to try to get out of here. And he said, no, we can't get out. And about that time, he says, here comes a German officer. So all drivers carry 45s and shoulder holsters. So, of course, when he bailed out, he had his 45. So he says, here comes that German officer. And when the German officer is coming, then I hear him challenge him to put up his hands. Handy Hock is the word. You don't pronounce it like that, I guess. That's not the German pronunciation. But the jury knows what you're saying. And as soon as he says Handy Hock, I guess the jury went for his gun or something. Harold Asher shoots him and kills him. And still they don't come for us. And now I know we're dead. He shot that German officer. I know there's no way out, man. We're going to die right here. But we laid there a few minutes, and still no jury. Tank's burning. And I said to Asher, we got to get out of here. The tank's going to blow up. I said, I'm going to stand up. And I said, if I knew it was a blacktop road, I said, I'll take one step at a time. With my hands in the air, maybe they won't shoot me. So he said, well, I'll go with you. So then we both get up and he gets a hold of me. And we just took a couple of steps. And then when he ran into some Germans, you know, and then they took us to another guy that was a German officer. It was a different story then. He spoke good English, but man, was he stinking rotten mad, boy. But see, I can't see, and I'm like this. And now I'm really starting to hurt. And I'm sure Asher had his hands up too. And they take us to this German officer. Asher's telling me that he's an officer. And this German officer shouts and hollers at Asher, really screams at him. You shot and killed a German officer. And Asher says, I did not. And this guy is really mad. You know, if the shoe's on the other foot, you know, we're supposed to be getting shot by this time. That's what you do. Good thing I didn't even carry a pistol. And he said, we saw you. And then I just knew then they were getting ready to kill us. And then finally he says, you can put your hands down. I guess that's war. You know, and I dropped my hands. I wasn't a Christian at that time, but I knew about God. And these are 2 words I said, thank you, Lord. So they took us and they loaded us in I don't know if you ever seen pictures of the Kugelwagens, the German wagon. So they loaded us in that, in the back seat. And I believe this was one of them that had the roof on it, I thought. They loaded us in the back. But on the floor was the body of that German officer that Asher killed. So they loaded us in that truck, and we drove a little bit, and then the car stopped. German civilians gathered around the car, and then they're talking, and then I could hear one German speaking like Zwei Panzer, second armored. He saw my patch, you know. And then there's airplanes are daylight now. Airplanes are flying around up there, and I just knew that they were looking for something down there that's moving, you know, where they come down and strafe it. Then I said to Asher, that's our next thing here. We're going to get killed by our own planes. So then we move on, and then we're slowing down again, and Asher says, it looks like it's a military something or other. So we're ordered to get out of the car. So we get out of the car. And then we go in a little building. It is some kind of a military thing, Asher's telling me. So I'm sitting over there. Asher's sitting over here. Then there comes a German in there. And he's talking. Of course, I don't talk because I can't see what's going on. So then he says something to Asher in English. So then he said something about, I have to go, I'll be right back. So I'm sitting over there on the bench, really hurting now, man. I just can't hardly hack it. I said to Asher, when he comes back, ask him if he'll give me some morphine. So when he comes back, Asher approached him or said to him, he's really hurting, he's having some pain, a lot of pain. Do you have any morphine? This guy is arrogant and loudmouth too, boy. A very good English man. This is what he screamed out. He said, you Americans are supposed to have everything. Where's your morphine? Till the war was over, until this day, when they write about losing the war, they tell us about the materiel of the Americans. Yeah. And he said, you Americans are supposed to have everything. So he goes and he comes back with the morphine, and he shoots me in the arm here. Then I laid out back on the bench. I started feeling pretty good, then I went to sleep. When I wake up, you know, I'm on a litter. Asher's gone. I don't know where I am. I don't even know what time it is. I'm being carried up a flight of stairs on a litter. 2 guys. And they set the litter down on the floor. And then I hear some girls talking. And I don't know why I thought this, but I thought they were probably nurses. So they're talking between the 2 of them, the 4 of them. So then they take me off the lift me up off the litter and stand me up. They take the litter and I hear them going down the stairs. And the girls are talking in German. I don't know what they're talking about, but they take all my clothes off and put me in a tub and gave me a bath. Would you believe that? And then put a nightgown on me. Man, I hadn't been in a nightgown, man, since I was a kid. And then they put me in bed. And all the time they're talking and what is sad about it, man, the only language being spoken is that of the enemy. And they put me in that bed and I just didn't know what to do. I had no idea where I was. And I laid in that bed. But, you know, you get the feel of things. Everybody does, not in a situation like that. I know over there on my right, that's where I came up. And over here, I know it's a nurse's station because I hear some activity. And over there, there's some Germans talking, men. And then I didn't know for sure, I didn't give it much thought, but it turned out that they were 5 wounded Germans. But they put me in that bed, and night started coming. And I thought, man, then another German comes in and speaks good English. That's what happened. And he sits over here by the nurse's station. He tells me who he is. He said, I'm a medic. He said, you're in an aid station. We don't have anything here. We can't help you. Medically, we don't have anything. We don't have much to eat. The girls will do their best to take care of you. Then he says that he didn't grill me anything about my unit or anything like that. Then he said that he had been a medic. He was a medic, and he had been in the Battle of the Bulge. And he's speaking pretty good English. And he said, down in the Bulge, he said, I was in an ambulance, a bus with a lot of medics, and they were taking us somewhere. And we thought we were going to be strafed, even with the Red Cross on the bus. He said, we all got out and started scattering. And he said, you know, your fighter planes came down. He said there were so many American fighter planes, they were strafed from one German soldier. And you don't generally do that. You just strafe a batch of them, you know. Then he started talking, asked me questions about the Russians. Because they knew, you know, when the Germans went into Russia, they said that the Russians were subhuman. You know how they hung them, all that kind of stuff. And they knew now the Germans were already in their land, and they were concerned with what the Russians were going to do to them. So then he left, and then they fed me something. I don't know what it was. It wasn't bad. And I was totally exhausted, Andy, from the day. And then I thought about them Germans over there. I thought, man, what's going to happen tonight when the lights are out? Some of them guys might get out of bed, man, and come over here and kill me, blaming me for their wounds. But it never happened. I guess finally maybe I did fall asleep a little bit. Then daylight came. It was Easter Sunday, 1945. Then the nurses were in there and come over to the bed and do this and that around the bed, you know, and speaking to me. And then the German would come in and he'd sit there and, you know, I'd eat and he'd talk. And that went on for, I guess, 6 or 7 more days. Then the German comes in one morning and I was starting to hurt, man. Oh, and my face was just a mess. Infection set in, man. I couldn't live with myself. But they would come in and put wet patches or something on me, you know. So then he came in one morning all excited, you know, and he said, your comrades are coming. Your comrades are coming. And, man, I sat up on the bed, man. I started crying. Andy, man, finally going to see and hear some Americans. And he said, the civilians saw a scout car outside of town. I was, man, the scout cars were reconnaissance. Maybe it's my guys. Man, they kind of got me ready to get rid of me, you know, to send me out. Man, I was there all day, man. Every moment, every minute passed by, man, they didn't come. Man, night came, and still they didn't come. Man, I was just disgusted. I wasn't disgusted. I started to cry. I thought, man, maybe there's nothing to it. I said, man, maybe we're going to die here. So I went to sleep, and next morning there was a 50 caliber machine gun going off. I knew it was 50. And I could hear Americans talking on the street, down below on the street. Then my concern was that they don't shoot through the window up there. Then they came running in the building. I guess it was 4 or 5 of them. I hear them running up the stairs, and I guess the Germans told them I was in there, Then they wanted to know my name and serial number and my unit, and did I need anything, and how did they treat me, and all this and that. And then it wasn't long after that, then the ambulance came by and loaded me up, took me out of there. Then I went back to, I think, Paris to a hospital, and I stayed there 2 or 3 days, then they flew me to England. But it was quite an experience.